Hey guys, my name is Loco Doco, the better looking host of Listen Loco, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is whatever episode number of Narrative Week this is. We'll find out later, whatever. It's going to say on the fucking screen in front of you. It's impossible to miss it. Like, I'm not on a radio broadcast. You all know what's going on. So this episode is going to feature LS as the guest. I won't even bother making some sort of shit meme about what the letters LS could mean because that's mad played out. Let me just give you a little hint, everyone in the community. By the time you figure out a meme, it's already dead and played out. So just leave it. Just let it go at that point in time. Because the only thing I would have done is I would have maybe done a joke like this LS. And now obviously on Narrative Week, we do a lot of our shows around certain themes. So this is going to be a Redux edition of the 2 versus 1, Kelsey Moser, Weldon Green mid-game discussion in which this time LS gets the feeling of the moderator bullying him and siding with his opponent all the time and making an incredibly biased argument in which nobody bothers listening to the people who are the least popular in the chat. So let's begin. Right, so no, this is actually a serious topic we're going to discuss here because that would be fucked up to do that to someone else. That would be really fucked up. And so I would never do that personally. I'm a man of integrity in some regards. So the actual topic of this episode, I think it's a pretty cool one, is one that people are going to hear. And sadly, this is just unfortunately the fate of Narrative Week, I'm afraid, Kelsey. Sadly, they're going to think that topic is played out. I have heard everything about that and know everything. But actually, the whole reason to do this episode, and most of our shows, is you don't. And in fact, most of the best points on this topic, I believe, have never properly been put forwards, at least on I would say vaguely big platform, etc. Unfortunately, they're just buried away in interesting observations people made in articles or on Twitter. So basically the topic is, why did Korea as a region stop being dominant? Now, you notice even the way I've phrased it, I've already just beaten every single person who ever discussed this topic because what they normally say is, why did Korea fall off? I don't know if you've been following League of Legends recently, but the G2 lineup that everyone is literally jizzing all over the walls for every time they play almost lost to this fucking team in a best of 5. Did I miss that or something? SKT was going to win that tournament if they don't fucking blow game 4. It would have been the end. They would have beaten Team Liquid in the final. And the shit thing is, even though Korea as a region is worse, the narrative now would be, well, they're back on top again. So what we're going to do here is, I know Kelsey particularly, and this is where we can start maybe, has the opinion that Korea's decline as the not just best region, but clearly the dominant region where, if they sent 3 teams, you assumed 2 were going to make the final if they had the right bracket. The decline of Korea in that respect, I know for you, Kelsey, everyone else looks at Season 8 going on, because obviously then you had the rise of RNG, and then you had Kingzone fucking it up, and, there's a lot of obvious factors as to where Korea's dominance was eroding already then, and SKT Dynasty was fucking just wrecked completely. But actually, I know for you, it already goes back into Season 7, and it goes back into, obviously the trigger word for you is the tracker's knife change, because that's what everyone just puts it down to, and then just closes the box and puts it on a shelf. But we're talking roughly around this era, right? So what's the genesis for you of when, presumably we're talking at literal game changes and meta changes before we get into teams specifically, right? So where does it start for you on this topic?
I think for me, where it starts is, I think 2017 is a really easy place to start, just because it's when you had the most competitive World Series, right? And also 2017, Korea didn't win MSI, right? If I remember correctly. I'm probably
no, 17 they did. That was the one that they won with Peanut and Huni just before
that's
it went to shit.
Right. That was right before it went to shit. But that was the Worlds leading up. They had more competitive regions.
That was the one where I already thought RNG would win in Season 7 Worlds, and they obviously had a pretty good chance to, but unfortunately they just played against a team.
A part of that obviously was a big thing with Ardent meta. I think a lot. That wasn't even the same sort of changes. It was just Ardent meta coming up. There was a lot more parity and a lot more back and forth because I think partly the mystique around Korea was fading slightly, and people were actually looking at ways in which to beat them. And a lot of the Korean infrastructure that people talk about, I think, was, first of all, doesn't really exist, right? And then second of all, there was parity within like what actually existed at the time. So
when you say that, just a second, because there's one thing obviously LS could himself talk about. When you say the Korean infrastructure doesn't really exist, I know this is actually something where, even though he obviously has no connection to the Korean region or scene, it's actually an area where, believe it or not, as far as I know, Veteran is actually ahead of most people, because he also said the similar things to me, which is that the concept of these like genius Korean coaches is just a narrative, basically. Like, the problem is, I don't know if you know this, LS, but that's basically the case in StarCraft as well, is that most of the genius coaches, like that Coach Park guy for SKT, their genius is in how you manage the people within the context of Korean culture. Like, as far as I know, none of them were like actual game geniuses. Like, the idea that fucking Lee Ji-hoon guy was like helping Flash is an absolute joke as far as I can tell. Like, he's the same guy who came in the league and just had the same shit. Like, you just let the players play. So basically, you might have the odd coach. Koma certainly seems like he's a guy who's on top of things roughly, but as far as I know, a lot of the rep of that is just like politeness in interviews. Like a lot of the sort of genius comes from the players and is just channeled through the coaches. That's at least what I've heard. So have you had anything similar, LS?
I mean, I can speak about my own experiences, I guess. I don't know. I guess I have to tread lightly, right? I can't talk. I can't talk how you would like me to talk.
Yeah, sure.
But I would almost bet that there is more strategical coaches in the West than there are in Korea.
Right.
I think strategical coaches are extremely, extremely rare in Korea, if they even exist.
This is kind of what I was alluding to, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I can talk about that I know that I have personal experience with, and I guess I don't care talking about it, is so a lot of people know that I left BBQ along with all the players in spring. Two of the players stayed behind. One of them never plays. He doesn't even live at the team house. And part of why he didn't live with the team house was disagreements with staff, and this is all public information, so it's not even he's spoken about it and there's tweets about it and whatnot. And he would lose his mind because he would be told things like Karthus isn't good, and the coach would say stuff like if Karthus is so good, why don't they pick him in LCK, even though he had 100% pick ban rate against this particular jungler in spring. Challengers Korea, 100% win rate whenever he picked it, whatever. And then one day when they picked it in LCK, apparently the coach went into the room and he's smiling and says, Malice, you're right, Karthus is good. And the entire reasoning for it was because it was picked in LCK. And it's just so inconceivable that was a real thing that happened, because I would have to try to make that shit up. But the general gist of it is everything's copy-paste, which is also why the meta moves so slow.
Yeah.
The meta is so fucking slow here. A snail moves faster. And teams get away with bad drafting because they're also just so much better.
I mean, they're all
copycatting
as well, right? Like
they're all copycatting, and teams can get away with really bad drafts, and they can have false opinions of champion strengths or meta things just because they're better. Better. That was a really weird. Anyways,
you're trying to rhyme it or something.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going, but
no. But what you're saying, by the way,
I'm trying to tread lightly.
Basically, like what LS said there is also exactly something else I heard, which is like the reason why it's funny, because the real joke here is if you're anyone from NA who's a coach and you're listening right now and you coached at any time in the last 5 years, you are a fucking idiot for copycatting Korea, who themselves were copycatting anything they thought made sense just without themselves knowing. Because as LS said, first of all, this is something else I'd heard about some of the coaches, that some of them really did have the logic that like, this champion's bad, based on what they saw from their players. Then if like Faker played it, like they would just be going to some player who isn't Faker, like, why aren't you playing that? And it's like, if he's in a bad matchup, what are you talking about? Like, you should play it. Look, he won on it. And then also, if you think about that sort of thinking being pervasive in a scene, you are going to get a very rigid paradigm structure, which this obviously ties into the modern day. If it turns out you guys are totally in like a little pond and you're not even like, you haven't even got a stream that flows into the global meta, you are probably going to be in deep shit when you go to an international tournament and have to sort. Basically now, if you're a Korean team, you could be the NA team who's spending the first week trying to figure out what the fuck the meta is at the tournament.
It's really funny because I've talked to multiple Korean imports about this now, and the vast majority of them say the first time they ever had a coach talk to them, try to teach them the game was when they came over to a Western region.
I remember. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's like really interesting because of this like really weird idea that the reason why Korean teams were so strong was because Korean coaches were so good game knowledge wise, right? So
yeah, but the players basically teach themselves.
Yep.
Most things in Korea are player driven. They're always watching VODs of each other. They always have each other's streams open. I mean, that's just what they do. So
wasn't there even like wasn't there a famous anecdote, LS? I'm trying to remember. I think this might even have been fake. There was some famous anecdote of a pro player in Korea where if they even like lost to someone in solo queue in a game where they thought it was like, oh, I did badly, they would just like message that person, ask him for tips. Like, oh, how, like, I think it was, wasn't it Faker who said something like that he messages one tricks and asks them like, what is the technique for how you do this combo or something?
EU pros do that too, like fucking caps, right?
Yeah, when Hjarnan was spamming Heimerdinger or whatever, a lot of the Korean pros reached out to FaZe Killer, and there's another
trick for that champion or something.
Yeah, he's a 2-trick Heimer Mordekaiser god in Korea, basically. And
this guy sounds like pure cancer.
And they reached out to him, and they reached out to another Heimerdinger. And they just had very lengthy conversations about the champions, trying to understand them. They also did this with the Chinese Jax God that I still believe is top 20 right now on the ladder, but he hit like top 5 or something at one point. His name's like Huya Hushin or Hushin Huya. Mm-hmm. Some Chinese Jax God pros reach out to him. Historically, the one that I talked about in a public video was Monkey, the Gangplank God. Faker reached out to Monkey when Gangplank was popular. They tend to do that with champions. And also there's an interesting thing that Korean pros do, which is unorthodox champions are actually evaluated by tracking the one tricks that will hover between D2 to Grandmaster. So
as in instance, to tell you if it's coming into the meta.
To tell you, right, to see if it's actually strong in the meta. So there's a champion, Alawi is a champion, and there's a player on Korea. He actually got permabanned, I think, for toxicity recently. But his ID was Gypsy Danger, and whenever Koreans considered or questioned if Alawi was good, they'd look up Gypsy Danger. If Gypsy Danger was like 300, 400 LP, they'd think there's something wrong with Alawi in the current meta. If Gypsy Danger was 2,000 games deep, D2, D3, Alawi's probably not that good.
Right.
So, that would be their baseline.
That's going to be the weirdest sort of anthropological approach to the meta I think I've ever fucking heard in my life. But okay, here's the question. There's a logic to it, but the question is this, Kelsey. Like, how do you tie? Like, there's a very obvious way, but how does this tie in? Do you think to the decline of the region? Because presumably, if you don't have this type of a coaching staff, which, as LS said, without being too harsh, the West actually, in some senses, is ahead of them in that regard. Like I'll give you a great example right now. As much as I have to, for the sake of the way the coach thing works, give coaching the split in LCS to Weldon Green, the real, as far as I know, the sort of behind the scenes thing is that he's doing a great job with the Korean head coach style. It's that this Irene guy supposedly is sort of the stud with all the knowledge in that team. So in theory, as far as I can tell in the West, we maybe have more of those guys, or at least they're in position to have more impact. So how would lacking this coaching staff play into the region declining, Kelsey?
I think that a lot of... So when Western and Chinese teams develop deeper infrastructure, that actually gives them different advantages to the LCK scene. So most of the time, the LCK players are just like really, really self-motivated and self-driven, and then all that like some of the LCK teams do are like kind of GM them and give them, okay, this is the schedule. Don't stay up too late, or they go out and they completely ignore them and they go to parties, whatever. Like, this is the stereotype, right? That a lot of the Korean coaches are just going out every night and not actually like the coaching position is actually a glorified like retirement, right? It's almost like going to NA.
Yes. It's like you get status by doing it. Yeah, you stay in the scene, you get a job, and they kind of just sort of like tip the hat to you and say, well, he's the coach, you must know he used to be a great player. And
so if it's like, I do think part of it is that when Western and Chinese teams are having staff that are actually more engaged in the players and are not just like hurting teams the way that staff was when it was like kind of forced on these teams in the past. You end up in a situation where there are different advantages that teams can bring to the table, that they can experiment more with, like what they have more metrics of determining whether or not champions are good than looking at solo queue ladder, which isn't the worst. And then they're able to come up with stuff that makes sense in a box set that Korean teams haven't adapted to. When the meta changes, makes really, really drastic changes like Ardent or like the Scuttle Crab, stuff like this, then you have staff that's able to help Korean players or Western and Chinese players a little bit more, as opposed to the Korean players just kind of relying on themselves to continue to catch up to this. And obviously young kids, like they're always going to have this attitude that, oh, we're the best, we don't have to put in that much effort, even though they are like the highest effort player region, whatever, and the best. They'll always have that kind of attitude, right? So I think that there is like something to that, and something to that being a reason why like Korea struggled a bit more and why parity became more of a thing in international competition.
Do you think that, would you agree with that, LS, that like kind of another problem is they have their own self-reinforcing element to the paradigm, which is like I even thought when it came to MSI this year, it was a good example, because like I already knew from how people criticized me for picking Griffin to beat SKT in the LCK final, because basically the whole hype behind the scenes was like, well, they've already been scrimming loads and they're wrecking Griffin in scrims and they're wrecking everyone else in scrims and they even reckon the Chinese teams they play. So if you know that they've played Chinese teams and they still come into MSI with the meta they came in with, that means they think that they know. Basically their logic coming into MSI was like, la 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 la, you're all wrong, I'm actually secretly the best and you're going to find out now. And it wasn't until they lost that they actually had to sort of humble themselves. So is it still a thing in Korea that the assumption by default is like, well, we're going to be the best, and it's not until you literally get beaten that you kind of think maybe not?
Korea still thinks they're the best. Around MSI, talking with some Korean pros, and even at that time, I think that still interacting with like BBQ, the general consensus was China, like maybe China would win MSI, but that overall Korea's better. Like if you take the 10 Korean teams and the 10 teams from every other region, and you did some like major tournament where all the teams are participating, Korea would come out on top.
Sounds oddly familiar.
Yeah, so the general consensus is that they're still the best. I know a lot of people in Korea think that Korea will win Worlds this year, and that there's a chance that Korea, depending on brackets, could even top 3. But I don't
One
know.
respect I can't even hate on them in is like, obviously I was doing it like half serious, half joking. But when after Season 8 Worlds, I said like, why is everyone saying Korea fell off when I just watched the Shy and Rookie carry the whole fucking tournament? Like, there is some degree to which if I was Korean, I would think that. I would look at IG and go, right, yeah, your region beats me because you've got 2 fucking godlike players from my region carrying the fuck in a team when it's not even like you're using next level strategy. Like, what the fuck is this? Well, they made the game in a solo queue and now you're wrecking me and so brilliant, yeah, like...
It's actually really funny though, because teams like IG and teams like G2, right? They're very player driven as well. So coming to
sometimes to the detriment of the teams as well as to the positive, right?
So like that formula still has a lot of success. It's just that I think that G2, for example, doesn't really put any sort of like kind of weird barriers on what they can play and what they can do. And I think that and their approach to fundamentals is still like really interesting to me. So that's one aspect of the game. And what Grabs does, like Grabs is a good coach because he is able to still help guide players in a productive way to solutions, right? So that's like still very important. And then obviously IG, I don't know, they sometimes don't even fucking listen, right? So I don't even know what's going on with that team, but that's generally a big factor of it. So it's not that like that formula in and of itself is flawed. It's just that almost this kind of echo chamber that it produces when every team is like that is causing problems. So
yep.
Right, being as I said before, it's sort of a trigger just because, like, when people talk about the tracker's knife change, they normally do it as in, like, right, well, that's the end of that. There's the conclusion. It was the tracker's knife all along and no need to discuss anymore. Whereas, as I said, like, that's a really good point. It's just, it's the beginning of the discussion is what happened with the jungle. Because basically, it's not the tracker's knife, is it, Kelsey? It's the jungle change generally. So, like, this is one area people have the vague sort of through thread that they understand just because of SK Telecom. Let's not say the Korean style. It's SK Telecom, and then later on, maybe Samsung had their own fucking super extreme bastardized version of it, which is like how you basically grind out games in which you're just going to win off these tiny vision advantages, and that's going to be your edge, right? That wasn't all of Korea anyway, but how do you think jungle being changed over the years has affected this element of not being the best region anymore?
You could take wards away, but that's not gonna force teams to fight, right? It's not gonna force teams to go into the enemy jungle and look for stuff. It's not gonna force teams to go into river and fight over shit, right? That's not like. So when people talk about how the tracker's knife changes caused more aggressive teams to have more success, that makes no sense. Because if the only change that happened was you remove tracker's knife, people are not gonna walk into the jungle blind, right? That's like really fucking dumb to say. So I think that you introducing certain more neutral objectives that you have to fight over that you can't give up. So stuff like the scuttle crabs. Like if you look at the 2018 Worlds meta, right, then every jungle that they picked was a level 2 skirmishing jungle, right? You had the Lee Sin, you had the Xin Zhao, you had the fucking Camille, like all of that stuff was coming out because you have to fight over the scuttle crabs. And so scuttle crabs is something that you can bring up, I think, that makes way more sense than tracker's knife. And it's still not the only problem because Korean teams at Worlds 2018 were making mistakes that they wouldn't have made, that could have been made a year before and would have still been mistakes, right? Stuff like really bad off-tempo lane swaps, making disastrous objective trades that make no sense, like top tier 2 for bot tier 2. All of these sorts of decisions that just seemed really off. It seemed lazy.
In Korea, like, this is obviously, either you can jump in on this, like in Korea, because obviously one of the problems I've always thought about League of Legends is if you ever watch anyone really good at the game in terms of knowledge do a VOD review, then the stuff they tell you is all the excruciating details that wouldn't even make sense to bring out on a broadcast. It would just bore people to sleep, you know. But it is super relevant, like how you set up this dive, whether someone should have gone to this lane, right? In Korea, do they actually have within their like understanding of the game, do they play heavily off lane priority? Do they play off things like, do you have scuttle control, therefore we're going to play off this lane in this way? Is that actually like a primary element of the thinking? Because obviously that's a difficult thing to bring out on the broadcast, and people often miss those things.
I think that would be a case by case. I really think it would be case by case. If I speak from my own experience, right, coaching not just BBQ but coaching like Korean players that would reach out or ask me my takes on certain spots. Sometimes when I would say like, well, mid has to manipulate his lane state here a minute in advance because it's obvious that the jungler is going to path like this and needs mid to be playing on this side of the lane relative to the crab, and they would treat that as if it was some fucking new revelation, like, oh, I didn't consider that I needed to manipulate my lane a minute prior. I think a lot of times it often happens by dumb luck. I don't think that they're entirely cognizant of every action that they're taking 1 to 2 minutes in advance. And I know that it was a really heavy, frustrating point for me. Because when I went into coaching the Korean players, I thought they would know a lot more than they did. About
by the way, I'll just say this. I'll do my classic Thorin move here, right? I'll take what's a perfectly reasonable statement, but I'll find the most extreme example. And as I'll say it, everyone will think, like some haters will just turn the VOD off right now. So I'll say it right now to get them out the room, right? This is not an exaggeration. Based on what I know about Korean League of Legends, if you had one of those things from Star Trek, the universal like translator or whatever, where you don't need to like translate, it just automatically tells you in their like language what you're saying, you know, and you can all just communicate perfectly. I'm not exaggerating. Are you ready for the bombshell? If I took Meteos for the jungle position and Kelsey Moser to teach them side lanes, we could actually level up the Korean region. Like, there are some players and teams would literally be like, Like, if they could understand perfectly just what Meteos was thinking in some of the games, they would, like, level up as a jungler. That's not a joke. Like, whatever they're doing right now, God bless them that they're really good players, but some of them don't even actually have, like, the understanding he does as to how to direct himself on the map and, like how to change his gank path so that in theory it's less efficient, but it's actually more efficient because you know that they were scouting that path. You know, things that that to them in solo queue you wouldn't do, but in a match you would and would seem revolutionary to them. That might sound crazy, but it's tied into what we're talking about here is that they're don't take this as lane priority, but their priorities within the game are different, basically.
Right.
Yeah, and it's actually just really interesting to watch. Even the LCK wildcard series, Africa SKT, and just think to myself that they're not even playing logically around like the win conditions of their team comps, right? So, for example, I watched the fucking Clutch Gaming series, and they seem to understand how to play with Kiana better than Africa, right? It's just really
listen. Say anything you want about Clutch Gaming. For how limited their ability to win was, they knew exactly what they had to do to win with any of the comps that they got. So, fair play.
To an extent, yeah. But it was just like really strange because it's almost like they don't understand how to execute. They were taking fights around objectives, and I know this is something that LS criticizes Korean teams a lot, is just like for fighting over almost every dragon, even when the dragons are really bad. Because it seems to me that they don't know how to snowball or how to progress the game state any other way than opting into some kind of fight, right?
Which again, just to tie in,
opting into a 5v5, which is just really awkward.
Which is what everyone makes fun of LCS for. Like, everyone loves to laugh at Americans. Like, haha, they can only end the game with a Baron. It's like, dudes, Korea does this. Like, Korea itself doesn't sometimes understand literally what teams like G2 do, where they just see like, oh, there's a hole with my champion and their champions. There's a hole in the game here where I can exploit now. And they don't do that. Like, they're still waiting for like the obvious scenario to set itself up, it seems.
Yeah, it's like, I bet if you talk to some of these Korean pros and told them, you know, this Cloud Dragon is not worth fighting over, they would say, well, we don't want the Cloud, we just want to fight, right? Like, we want to take the fight.
Yeah,
So, like, it's stuff like this that...
Must be delicious irony for you coming from the Chinese region that's where Korea's ended up now, by the way, Kelsey. Imagine if Monty was listening to this right now.
That's a pretty logical explanation I can see for why it's like everyone, okay, we're going to give up tempo on the top side and give up Baron Visions because we were going to fight over this fucking Cloud Drake. Now, like, it's really strange, yeah. And both teams opt into it.
What other elements of like jungle aspects do you think affect the fall off in that respect then? Because like for example, is there way of thinking about jungle the reason why like most of them still are in some sense, even to this day, most Korean teams are in a mentality that makes the game, it feels like it makes the game state longer. Their knowledge of their concept of when they can win a game seems much more delayed, or like they aren't the team that they don't snowball still that hard. Like even some of my favorite teams, Griffin, still not a team I'd expect to stomp you in most of these games.
Yeah, they're.
Oh, go ahead.
Go.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think Score is like a really good example of a jungler that found a lot of success by playing around where he knows the enemy jungler is going to be and getting advantages off for himself, right? And counter jungling, getting XP leads, understanding like how the rubber banding of camps work. So, but the nerf to jungle XP seems like it makes it a lot harder to play that kind of style just this year. Obviously, there are other factors in previous years that we could talk about, like
the rubber banding and all that shit.
Yeah, so just like that kind of thing.
Does that contribute to the fall off as well?
Jungling style a little bit more outdated, and so more of this like relevant. Okay, we're gonna be in the lane, and we're gonna everyone's gonna fight bot level 3. Like, okay, that's more Chinese, right? Everyone's going to fight over the tower. EDG really just wants to take every single plate in every tower that they can. This kind of like taking fights into lanes instead of into jungle makes more sense in terms of how the game is being played now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's obviously an area where people themselves have actually looked a little bit. But like, let's expand on that point a bit, because in the old school, so now I guess we're going to have to talk, I'm assuming we're talking like season 6 and previously, in terms of the jungling style, like, this is an area where, like, a game I think of immediately is if everyone remembers when Fnatic played against SKT at the Season 5 MSI, where, no, we're not going to talk about the fact that Feathervin got some solo kills on Faker. Game 5 of that series is the one I remember, where, like, didn't Bengi, like... Didn't they take, like, all the buffs or something and just completely control the game in every respect? And, like, basically Fnatic had no chance to win. The Korean style in the past was, like, it's kind of their philosophy in a lot of senses, is if you have the lead, you think of it as, like, I have the lead. It's my choice as to how the game goes now. And you don't necessarily use that to smash the other team. You just go, right, I'll hold on to this lead. And then inevitably, at the end of the game, surely I've won the game. And so, in the jungle sense... For some of those players in Korea, it looked like their ideal jungle scenario was I just take your camps and know where you are, and that's all I need to know. And if I know that, I'm winning the game, right? Whereas that's not really what anyone does now, as far as I can tell. Like, in fact, you can't even really get that lead in a way, right?
The whole thing with the rubber band XP and the nerf to jungle XP just makes everything. You can still get level advantages and be in the right places at the right time, but comeback mechanics that Riot's put in place, even if you get turret gold or you get kills or you counter jungle and whatnot, the comeback mechanics are just so obnoxious that leads can be snapped in half in a second, or leads can fall apart. I think there was a Reddit post, right? A champion that gets 2 kills in lane, if you kill them or something, you get more total gold.
Right.
Because of the bounty like and stuff, I assume. Right?
Yeah, because of the bounty and the rubber or the comeback XP and all this other stuff, which turret plates are really cool and nice. It's very rare that you often get all 5 unless you utilize Rift Herald or something goes super wrong inside of a lane phase. And so there's so many things that are in place to slow the game down. Which is why, I mean, in LCK in particular, which this episode's about, there's the lull state, which people associate with the Twitch emote, but it's literally just the calm state that usually happens between 13 minutes to like 21 minutes. There's no activity. And it's just really sad.
I mean, I think that that's not typical of every game, right? That's typical of a lot of LCK games, but
a lot of LCK games, right?
Yeah, if you look at competition internationally, that state doesn't have to exist, right? You could still accelerate. You can, like, a lot of teams in LPL literally just opt into turret trades to open the map, right? Mm-hmm. And then create more advantages like that. So they literally create neutral objectives over stuff like vision to fight over instead of entering a lull state. So I think that that state doesn't have to exist. It's just weird that they're creating these opportunities where, okay, we're going to use this window to counter jungle here instead of accelerating this lane. And so that's going to create an opportunity where the enemy jungler can just come back because he'll take like 1 or 2 rubber banded camps and then he'll go bottom and he'll get a lead here for his lane, but then the other guy is going to gank the same lane, and he's going to get more golden XP for his laners, and it's going to be back and forth, this kind of loop where no one is making like a significant advantage. No one's actually playing to open the game or change the game. So it's really awkward to watch. And I would say that the rubber banding mechanics, like that kind of stuff, was already, a lot of that was already in place to an extent. Obviously, jungle XP was nerfed this year in general, but a lot of the rubber banding stuff was already in place for Worlds 2017, right? When we talked about, I guess, like the Misfits SKT series. I think I remember reviewing that series and just watching like really weird shit being done by SKT that made no sense. And then Maxlor was just kind of able to casually take camps and then play for, like, Maxlor was literally, there was one game where Maxlor literally just dove bottom like fucking 4 times and was so much gold down, but then he just walked into the enemy jungle because the map was open, and where SKT had been taking their jungle camps, like they had respawned, he was able to farm them and then get back in the game that way. So
okay, I've got a question. Does the terminology everyone used this year for this style of play is like accelerationist or something along those lines. The idea that like when you get these early openings or you get a slightly, you're supposed to like basically it's basically like solo queue mentality. If you're trying to carry a solo queue game, you're supposed to just constantly apply your advantage and build it up and make it insurmountable and win the game as fast as possible. Right, in this sort of a thinking, does this apply to this topic? Because as I've referenced many times, I was actually amazed to hear that Koreans like literally verbalize this. I thought they were doing this unconsciously, but I've mentioned this on past shows that if you go, there was a Cloud Templar VOD during MSI where they have this discussion that they literally think the correct way to play League of Legends is you spread all of your advantages around the map as much and you kind of make the whole team take the advantage. Like so for example, the great example would be if you get a gank off top and your top laner's up a kill, cool. Now he doesn't need any more ganks. He's up a kill. He has a lane advantage. No problem. Now let's go to the bot. Whereas obviously, if you look at certain teams around the world who have very fantastic solo laners, if you get a kill there, why not go back to that lane and get 2 kills? Why not have that guy be up 4 kills and have the lane state completely ruined for the other top laner 10 minutes into the game, 15 minutes into the game, whatever it might be? Is this element of philosophy basically to the game relevant to the Korean fall off? What do you think?
I still think they believe in that. I mean, I believe in that. In the sense that let's say that your top laner is I mean it can be anyone. Let's say that it's Keen. Keen's gonna win his lane probably over 80% of the time, regardless of the matchup. He's mirror matchupped too many people in LCK and won both sides of it. So if you know that your top laner is going into the matchup with 80% and that's on even footing, if he gets a kill, it shouldn't be recoverable. He should be such a better player, he doesn't need more assistance to accrue advantages or get advantages.
You just need to, all you need to do, LS, is every now and then, just as a personal favour to me, just every now and then throw the word hypothetically in there or theoretically, and then you'll avoid a lot of the problems that people have. Like, because what you just said there is absolutely correct, but that is if robots play each other. So I know what you mean. Keen is the best equivalent to a top lane robot we've got right now, mate. But everyone else is going to be like, but it's easy to still get ganked to loot. Like, I know what you mean though. Yeah, yes. Yeah, in theory, if he already has the advantage even footed and you give him a gank, yeah, you should win the lane all the time then, yeah.
Right. But I think that's how Koreans view the game. It's in isolation, sort of like a 1v1. Someone's coming into it with an edge. It's like starting the game with first blood. I mean, this is a very common thing globally, right? If someone gets first blood in their lane, they get a starting item. It is inconceivable, or they get laughed at if they manage to still lose with the advantage.
I think so. There are a couple of things that one I think that Thorin is talking about, which is that the acceleration play, right? Because I think it's in the same idea where you're spreading the advantage from the one kill to other people if you're continuing to go to top lane, right? Because mid jungle, they push out, they roam top, that's a 3-man. Suddenly mid has a kill too. You have additional gold on that side of the map. Are you okay? Are you happy?
No, you just breathe in. That's all. I know it sounded like dramatic, but you're just doing something weird. Whatever.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, but it's like what?
Sorry.
And they go top lane. They dive. They split the plate gold. They can then transition, or top gets a TP advantage. Suddenly, you can go to bot lane. You get the top laner involved, and suddenly that top lane advantage is spread to the bot lane. So you're still like. I think you still have to get the top laner involved in other things that are happening to properly be extending his lead to the rest of the map, as opposed to just like leaving him on an island. He'll win his lane. Like that's an advantage that you should be using. I think is a big difference in mentality. I don't know if a lot of the LCK teams just think that the top laners should be left to his own devices. After one kill, he can just chill, and then he'll still be playing the lane phase if that's something that they think that he should actually do. And suddenly he's not part of the game anymore, and then the rest of the game is played like 4v4. That doesn't make any sense to me, and maybe that could be part of why the Korean meta is struggling. But it would be really weird to me if they thought that way.
Like LS, let me put it this way. Maybe this makes more sense. In this way of thinking, if I'm trying to contrast the two paradigms, the Korean way to me There's obviously, well, again, by the way, we're obviously using very, very broad generalizing strokes here that will not apply to some teams and some players who just do it differently anyway. But the general Korean philosophy, as far as I can tell, the reason why I see a flaw in it is because despite what you said being absolutely accurate, obviously, yes, in terms of his responsibility, that player, as long as something doesn't go unfairly against him, should win out. The problem is that still plays into the mindset of like, we are slowly going to, at the end, as the form of some equation based on all these players we do, win the game at the end with all our advantages. Whereas like the logic, I guess, in the other prevailing way of thinking would be, well, if I have the advantage, why don't I just end the game as soon as possible? So as a result, why have the advantage where like I'm going to win the lane? It's like, why should there even be a laning phase? If we just bang this guy's lane for the next 10 minutes and they can't stop us, or even worse, doing so, as Kelsey kind of alluded to also, would if you do that, it's also going to draw the other jungler's attention all the time. So now all the other lanes, in theory, also get an advantage. Then I'll have no jungle attention. So in that world, it's kind of like a G2 game. Like, why even bother letting the game play out normally? Because I would even say, outside of the meta element, you also just psychologically fuck with the opponent. Because one thing I'm wanting if I'm behind in a game that's a slow game is cool. I have loads of times to think about what I could do now, or where I'm going to have a chance to get in the game again, or maybe what the upcoming next move from the enemy is. If you're accelerating the game, I can tell you that it's the same concept in Counter-Strike. There's some teams that just love to fight, and part of why they love to fight is because it becomes so chaotic that teams that need a very strict like hierarchy of what to do next will lose their place. They won't know when they're in a winning situation. They won't know what the next play is supposed to be. They actually might even just be thrown off completely by the idea that like we're all gambling. Like obviously the word coin flip should probably be thrown in at some point in time. Koreans typically, I don't think I've ever seen a Korean jungler that was like MLXG. I've never seen a player who would have played in an official game on a top team who was allowed to even have that mentality. Like, that I'm going to go for players like some of MLXG's coin flips. Like, my joke used to be, he's one of those people, like Veteran does as well, where they've taken the coin flip and it's like, it's not a coin flip if you were 30% odds on the, like, that's just taking bad gambles. Like, coin flip's supposed to be legit 50-50. Like, well, coach could have gone the other way. It's like, no, these guys were going for some that were bad ones, but they just wanted to gamble, which it was very against, as far as I can tell, Korean thinking on the game.
I don't think anyone actually believed in Krug's camp. That was like one of my favorite things about it, is that he would legit go 10 minutes without taking Krugs in some games. It's fucking weird to watch that guy play, and I don't really advocate that you should play jungle that way, but yeah.
Malrong and Onfleek are the only two Korean junglers that come to mind that play in the way that you're talking about. Malrong, I mean, I almost got... I think I almost got in trouble. I think I was on the borderline of something that might be like acceptable to say during a cast, but there was one time where his path was so miserably bad. It's on like the cusp of win trading that he's idly waiting like 30 some unholy amount of time, moving in a circle waiting for Krugs to respawn because he has nothing else to do because he just kept failing ganks on Lee Sin. And I think I made some sort of a joke about blindness, like because he's playing Lee Sin, Blind Monk, whatever. But it's so bizarre to me. He'll gank on Karthus without doing any camps. He'll skip camps on Karthus. He'll skip camps on power farming junglers. And he'll just try to make these ganks work, like what you're saying, Thorin. Like 25% chance or something that it should ever work, or it requires the opponent to just go comatose in the middle of the fucking lane. And I can't possibly fathom what is the train of thought. What is actually running through your head where you think this is a good idea? And I can't think of anything.
I wonder if it's goes back to what you mentioned about BBQ. Obviously, you were coaching a KRCS team, but I wonder if because to me, it's like the more the game evolves, the more you absolutely have to think of mid jungle as a duo, right?
2v2. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%, because the wave state that you create in mid can determine the entire game, right? Because if you can set up the wave so that you're delaying the enemy mid's back timer and you're creating a freeze early on and both jungles have to come and you win that 2v2, you can basically just win the game off of that, right? So you have to, like, the favorable points for the jungle to gank also have to be determined by the lanes and back and forth. Like, those have to be created by the lanes. So that's, I wonder if like he's just looking for these 30% chances because his lanes aren't being set up correctly. But I don't really know which one you're referring too. So
any game.
Well, you could even, I guess, throw in as well, right? I am assuming, Kelsey, you can also throw in that, again, if people don't understand the actual, just the lane state of the wave, sometimes some of these ganks that did not have a high chance of working might also be like a panic move, basically, to get someone else back in the game whose lane state's in a shit state, right? So you basically gamble then, like, first of all, you might be able to get more CS that might add up to what you might lose. Also, this guy is just going to get worse and worse if we leave him in the position he's in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just really interesting to think that, because a lot of people have just held, I think also a really big factor that people don't talk about is almost just like a mental one, because a lot of LCK teams have just been held on a pedestal for a really long time. People copy like stuff that they learned from LCK teams in pro teams. They use VODs from LCK teams to teach players the game, right? And there's this idea that they're just not beatable. So almost all of the scouting against these teams was almost subpar. Like even going back to the 2018 MSI, right? I saw people talking about how, where Team Liquid was saying stuff like, we can beat everyone except for Kingzone or something like this. Like staff members of Team Liquid were saying that, and it was really weird to see that shit, right? Like that there was still this kind of idea of mental pedestal that Korean teams were being kept on.
No, that makes perfect sense. That does happen even in Korea. One of the things that Kelsey, I'm unfamiliar with if you know anything about StarCraft 1, but even in StarCraft 1, there would be periods where the meta would be stagnant for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And even if a player did stuff that was unorthodox and they were semi-successful with it in various forms, if they weren't an elite player, it wouldn't be credited and no one would bother looking at it. There was a Zerg player named Quanro that I remember. Yes. He was the epitome of cheese.
Yeah.
He is the epitome of aggression and all-in timings. And
by the way, just for context, this is in an era when basically like late game style of Zerg had been mastered. Like people knew like the three match start. So as a result, like it was very weird that you do basically what would be the equivalent of like ladder play, but in a professional setting. But he would get like inexplicably way better results than you'd expect he should.
Right. You would imagine that his approach shouldn't work. And the weirdest thing about it is that if a player like Jaedong or Ma Jae-yoon, Savior at the time or something, if they would ever do any of the build orders or something that he was doing, everyone else would follow suit. But because he's not good enough, or he's not credited to the same degree as these players, no one follows suit. So like in Korea, Karthus was really, really slow to start getting picked up. I mean, they played him actually after he was nerfed, but the Korean meta in general, for instance, I think it is by far the worst in the entire world. Because you have teams like Griffin, like Damwon, that they can draft worse team compositions, or they can draft objectively bad, just given how the team comp will play out. And because they're better and they win with it, people attribute the losses to something else, and thus draft never gets fixed.
Along those lines, then, maybe this is a way we could segue that. That obviously, I alluded to it earlier, Kelsey, a problem with this whole topic is that we're going to keep saying Korea, but realistically, the spectre of SK Telecom's dynasty is what looms over the whole fucking scene. And if people already have a mentality that Korea is the best, and then internally in Korea, whoever the champions are must be the best, the way that SKT played, which to me, this might sound weird, I always thought SKT's style was a mixture of like how to make Faker have the most influence on the game, combined with actually a bunch of weird band-aids. Like the fact that you can win the World Championship with band-aids doesn't really make sense in theory, because League's supposed to be this super strategical game with team play elements, but it kind of did exist. So the problem is, if you're looking at someone using band-aids, and well, I guess I'll follow the analogy, and you're thinking that's the sign of perfect health, like, well, no, it isn't. Like, that's actually, that's weaknesses I'm patching up there. So has, like, the SKT way of playing, and do you think that has contributed to why Korea is stuck in this mentality, or hasn't moved towards modern-day styles of playing?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, so people still equate the 2005 I guess 2013 to 2017 SKT era shit, like that is the Korean style of play, right? That is what people call it when it's really just the SKT style of play. Like there are variations in how other Korean teams played that were.
I mean, Rox Tigers obviously played nothing like that at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's like people still equate that to it. So this idea of, and a lot of people's perception of the way SKT played was really poor too, because SKT actually weren't like a high vision oriented team. They were really good at vision denial, right? They were very good at using sweepers and denying like any jungle and any vision in their own jungle, defensively clearing out wards. But they use that as an opportunity of, okay, when you show in the lanes, we can figure out and get picks on you elsewhere. Like they didn't really use their own vision that much.
I think Papa Smithy described it to me in some upcoming content that I'll tease here as like SKT with the best counter punchers, if you want to use like a combat sports analogy. Well, if you think logically, it would play into it. If you remove their vision and they have to make more mistakes and then you counter that with the correct play, well, it'd be the other way around. If you were vision control, like, why would you be just sitting back waiting for them? You'd take the initiative, wouldn't you? You have the vision, they don't.
But this style, like, didn't emphasize laning, right? It didn't emphasize a lot of things that people are saying are important now, right? A lot of things that people are criticizing teams for not doing well, like the SKT quote-unquote style, didn't rely on those. Same thing with like Samsung. So you talk about SKT versus Samsung all the way back in 2016 or whatever, right? That was the final, and that game was like 3/5 of those games were won by the team that had a disadvantage at 15 minutes.
It was super late games on some of them, right?
So it was just like this kind of approach just ended up being held up, and this was like the way that you're supposed to play, right? You weren't supposed to play in an aggressive way. You weren't supposed to emphasize laning. That even like G2 said, well, we're too good at laning. TSM said we're too good at laning, so when we can't get these laning advantages against like better teams or whatever the fuck, it was such a weird like mentality time warp. So we're going to de-emphasize laning and de-emphasize like learning those skills and try to play like the best team, right? Instead of trying to play to the advantages of the players and the setups that they had. So it was just really weird that like all of this kind of stuff was being copied without even understanding the mechanisms for it. And then even some of the players on the SKT lineup now, like they don't know really simple basic stuff. Like I actually think Bang's laning phase improved a lot this year, right, compared to where it started on 100 Thieves.
It was that one game he played in the 100 Thieves Academy team that just changed his whole world. You know, he was like, finally, I understand how to lane.
The Sivir versus Sona game just completely opened his mind.
Sorry, I'm going to send Reckless to you in the off-season, like, work your magic with him. Oh, if my support stays in the lane, we can actually whip right. The whole world's opening for me now.
Insane. Yeah.
What about this though? Because this might sound like more of an abstract, so I don't know if you want to jump on this at all. But I actually also think, in the same way as SKT winning obviously skewed a lot of what Korea thought was the right way to play and what they did, another aspect that kills me is I always thought a knock-on of SKT winning is that's the real reason why you got these KT super teams. Because that just shows how poor the thinking of Korean players was. Their logic went like this. Well, the only way to beat SKT would be to have all the best players play on one team, which is like, but that's not what SKT's doing. So like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And worst of all, I always made this point. Season 7 Worlds was ruined by Katie Rolston not qualifying. Because what it meant was you took what basically, if they'd have been on different teams, might have been like the fucking first or second all-pro LCK lineup. You put them all into one team and had them not even go to the international tournaments. Like, well, it's not really going to be a surprise that you're not as good because obviously this might sound weird, so I'll put it in context for modern day people. Yes, Team Liquid, G2, these are super teams. These are super teams that make sense though. And to be fair, they're also playing in regions that traditionally weren't the best, so I can vaguely understand them stacking the best players. If I'm in Korea, if you look at the wealth of Korean talent that goes across the spectrum of styles of play, it would make way more sense to take those KT super teams of Season 7 and Season 8 and literally take the players and make like 3 different teams that would all be better than the fucking KT super team. If you took the right supportive elements around all these players, they'd be way better. So it actually, I think there's a great example of how they collapsed the talent of their own team. And obviously the ultimate irony of all this that I'll never get over is after the KT super teams finally broke up, SK Telecom's response was to make their own KT super team. Like, well, I'm out, guys. I can't handle this anymore. This is too much for me. I can't handle it.
Yeah, it was actually really funny because when that team didn't win Worlds, right, in 2017, there were a lot of people saying, "Oh, but they should get this sick player instead, right? They should get a score and they should get X, Y, and Z." And it's just like it's literally it's not at all consistent with how SKT won. Like the successful SKT lineups were the ones that you look at them and you're like, "This is fucking bad, right? You're taking all of your B team players and you're kicking Piglet. You're taking this like just complete obscure rookie straight from solo queue and putting him up and making him play in Italy first." Those teams with the lineup, those iterations of the SK successful, not the ones where it's like, "Oh, we're going to take the really proven players, we're going to put them there," because I think SKT had very kind of defined way of playing the game, and more veteran players are not going to be willing to or even able to fit into the like kind of holes that are left by the players that formerly held those roles. Because again, like you said, it's about like setting up Faker to succeed most of the time, and a lot of that was it's like you could almost look at the way that you could almost make analogies between TSM and SKT in terms of like how their fucking junglers were treated, right? Obviously.
There's the real irony, right? Is
very different, but
in a sense, if you join SKT, your rep as a jungler will be tanked, but you might win the world championship. So if you're willing to give that up, okay, it's a trade, I guess.
And then so you have like the evolution of Clid now, and I don't know, I haven't watched SKT as much this split, so probably LS could talk a little bit more about Clid, but the narrative around Clid at least is that he's like telling Faker what opportunities to create right in the lane, and they're playing the game out like this, and it allows them to be like a more aggressive mid jungle duo.
Clid by nature is really aggro. One of the memes in Korea right now is that Faker roams a lot more, that he's a lot more active with the jungler. But I feel like the real turning point for SKT was the removal of Mata. I think that's probably infinitely
it's literally when they started winning.
It's actually when they started. The general direction of the game has changed for SKT, and that makes me raise the question: how much maybe of a problem actually is Mata, and maybe his unwillingness to change direction of what all the roles should be doing, because KT was plagued by this as well.
I'll even give you another example. I won't use the 100 Thieves player since Kelsey's here. I'll save her that, but I'll just do the European equivalent. If you look at someone like Mithy, right? Clearly, when his teams do well, there's a reason everyone points to this guy and gives him all the props in the world. But when his teams do badly, as far as I know, behind the scenes, he's still equally involved. So the problem is, again, if you allow I know people won't believe this because they still think coaches decide everything. But when you have a player who's incredibly influential in a captain's role, that can be to the detriment of the team when that doesn't fit the current meta. Of course, and Mata, obviously now, as you correctly say, Les, aside from the spring championship they won, there's actually, you could argue he actually might have fucking cost his team some championships in some of these lineups, because he was the guy who basically had a lot of the says to what they did.
I think also the more the game goes, the more reset timing matters, and almost every single fucking team Mata's been on has been like so bad at resetting for tempo.
Sure.
So bad at it. So
you mean as in, like, for people who don't know, they basically, like, they could get the advantage, but they just greed for more, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's one of the trademark kind of Mata things, and it was something that happened on Samsung White, right? It feels like he's constantly trying to recreate Samsung White in terms of his bot lane's going to play super aggro. They're going to set up like one topside gank, but then they're going to use that advantage for bottom, and then there's going to be like less interaction between mid and jungle and more interaction between support and jungle, but not always in like a productive way generally.
Right.
And then the mid game setups are usually really weird. Like a lot of his teams have off tempo swaps for top side objectives, stuff like this. It's really strange to watch. It's like he's trying to recreate Samsung White almost anachronistically with players that aren't going to be Samsung White players, right? So,
I mean, listen, it makes perfect sense. We ruined matter. What we did was we had him play a whole year in which his team wasn't the best, and then we let him win the World Championship, gave him the MVP, and then said, right, you're off to China now, here's all the money. You never get to actually get the next year where you logically should probably have lost, fallen off again, and not been the best team, in which you would have then decided, right, that was just for that time period. And so as a result, he keeps reaching back, thinking, I can extend what happened there. Whereas it's like that, mate, literally everyone else in the world copied you. Like, that wouldn't even make sense to do that now anyway, would it? Like, you wouldn't have the edge that you had back then.
it's actually kind of sad because I still think Mata is a really individually talented player, but they're very obvious like calling cards of teams that use. And this is another reason why I always kind of was skeptical that coaches would that a coach that was assigned to Mata's team was dictating the way they would play. Because it's like they play the way a Mata team plays. Like, this is really.
By the way, if someone's a complete layman and they watch the LCS, and obviously they don't always discuss these concepts, reset timers, etc., why it's significant, right? In terms of the general game state, as we're talking about, let's say, like, take for example, like a Mata team here. If you were like the KT Super team, what was most infuriating about them was they literally had two modes. They either like everything lined up, they got the early kills, they just snowballed the fuck out the game over, you have all the best players, great. Or they would just repeatedly lose like a million team fights in a row and then the game would end no matter what lead they had in the game. And part of this was, as you say, like they didn't use the reset timer whatsoever, they didn't understand whatsoever when to back. And so as a result, it's a bit like, I'll tell everyone one of my biggest pet peeves. I don't comment on it because it happens every fucking game, but the amount of games in the West that I hear commentators talk about like a team's in the lead going into a team fight in which they haven't based and used any of the gold that was the lead. Like, stuff like that actually literally blows my mind because at that point in time, like, you haven't got a lead. Like, you've got a hypothetical lead once you get to the shop. You haven't been there. It's not Dota 2. You don't have a courier come with those items. So, like, things like these are very significant because obviously even your perception of who's in the lead, who has to make a play, what comp's going to win is completely thrown off by this.
And I think this is, like you said, this isn't just a Korean player thing, right? Obviously, a lot of players who have played for a long time have had a lot of clout are going to be saying, okay, well, what worked for me then? How can I make it work for me now, right? Especially if they start losing games, they'll just get more and more entrenched on, well, this is X, Y, and Z. And that's another reason why I think super teams don't succeed, because typically those super teams have players who all have that kind of mentality, right? This is what worked for me then, this is what will work for me now, but all those things will be different. And the alignment on those things is pretty rare.
Right. Obviously, in this territory, I have to be very careful against such a generalizing broad stroke I'm going to take here. But is another aspect of Korea's issue the fact that because they traditionally, I say this very carefully, obviously China had some very classic teams, they were traditionally the best at team fighting or knowing when to take a team fight or which scenario in which you actually have an edge in this team fight. So hence why I think if you go and look at teams like SKT classically, I'd say Griffin maybe at the beginning in spring, they were amazing at team fighting from behind as a result. Like they could somehow win when it was like, how are they doing? Well, they actually are taking a team fight that makes sense. This is actually a very logical one. The problem is, in the modern day at least, it is perceived that some games don't even have to have 5v5 team fights. And so if you're in a world in which you still think the game will end with us taking the right 5v5 team fights, you are naturally not going to be aligned with the way the game is played. Is that relevant at all to Korea's status?
Oh, so you mean just in like knowing when to take fights, or?
I feel as though they still think there's always going to be a phase in the game where we're going to have 5v5 team fights.
I think that's consistent with how they play. Yeah, there's some idea that, but there are still teams like Kingzone in 2016 could literally only play 1-1, right? So
sure.
There's not like this level of consistency everywhere. What do you think of this?
No, I think that especially amplified by the lack of awareness inside of drafts that Korea has. I don't think Korean teams actively look at the 5v5 spectrum and think at what point is our team composition worse or better. And I think that a lot of things end up occurring extremely arbitrarily. And I've been very vocal and bitter about it in many of my
Can you give us
casts.
like a hypothetical example or even a real one if you got one?
There was actually a really good game that showcased it. Hold on. I think I cast it. Let me just look at it. It was a game where I think like Chungo just had to flash on Azir and Jin Air would have beat Afrika. Alright, let me just find it.
Is that this past week? The last generation?
No. It was it's like
By the way,
ago.
for anyone who doesn't watch LCK or only watches marquee matches,
Oh yeah.
just to keep this going for people who don't know, it's a real thing. Jin Air actually, even with different players, continues to actually have like some positive signs that will inevitably, if he chooses to, allow LS to wreck himself even further with comparisons to Western teams.
Root and Kellen, for instance, are they're one of the best bot lanes in LCK, but they're on Jin Air, who's 0 and 18. But Root and Kellen, I think a lot of people, they just think that Jin Air players all around are bad. Root's one of the best ADCs in LCK. Root and Kellen is probably a top 4 bot lane.
There have been a lot of like
just in laning phase.
ADKs that come out of Gen Air, actually.
Yeah, I know. It is really weird. But okay, yeah. So game 2, week 6, Jin Air versus Afrika. It's such a disgusting team composition loss, but Afrika ends up winning the game. But there's this threshold that's eventually hit where even though Jin Air had hemorrhaged so much in the early mid to late transition, etc., and they fell behind so much.
Set us up then. Tell us like what is the comp and in what way should they have turned out in a sense and what went wrong?
So
Give us
you
the
have
overview.
Jin Air has Karma, Sejuani, Azir, Zaya, and Morgana. On red side.
How many
Afrika
fucking
has-
power picks have we got there? Right, okay, I don't know how this draft ever existed, but okay. Apparently they were, again, I'm not on the LCK broadcast, I'll make the joke that this is a fucking win trade right here, but okay, that draft exists.
Afrika has Kennen, Lee Sin, Twisted Fate, which is 80.
This is win trading, what is this shit? Right, go on, keep making the rest of the draft, go on. What's the bot lane?
And Nautilus.
All
And
right,
so-
bot lane's decent, I guess.
It is so inconceivable because the AD Kennen can't really move the Azir or the Karma until a growth stage of the game has been hit, at which point Jin Air's team composition is already online. Because 3-4 item spikes generally don't occur until between 29 to 33 minutes, depending on what's happening inside of the game. So at that point, the Azir and the Zaya are already too strong. They're just going to face roll you through a Karma Mantra D. The way that the two team compositions are set up. And it's so difficult for Afrika to 1-3-1 because Jin Air has 3 separate champions that can actually all just hold side lanes with relative ease. And if Mountain Drakes don't get RNG'd or something, Afrika can't realistically do the Baron because it's too easy for Jin Air to defend red side. And so in this game, skirmishes and so many random ass fucking things keep taking place rather than Jin Air just being like a fucking Zerg or Terran in StarCraft 1 and just being like, no, we just have to defend and never move out or advance on the map. And as long as they don't get Baron, we're just going to attack move at 3 items. But bringing it full circle to the point, I don't think that thought ever crosses Jin Air's mind. I don't think they ever look at it from the perspective like, we don't actually need kills. We don't need to take objectives. We don't need to do any of this because we're going to kill them in one shot once we hit this threshold, or we're going to start the Baron and demand that they come to us and we're just going to kill them. And when Afrika's drafting this team composition, I think I was even talking about it live on the cast. I don't think that they're realizing, wait a minute, we're drafting into a loss. Yeah, how objectively awful it is. And even if the notion...
Does that mean then that when they were doing the draft, from your perspective, were they just still tunneled on like, this is an individual lane matchup? Or for example, like, well, I am a good Kennen player. Was it along those lines, do you imagine?
Oh, that's so fucking bullshit. And
It's
I
a
know
sad thought, but-
that's the fucking notion that the fans hold, right? Is they think to themselves, well, a freak is very confident that the cannon's going to get ahead and do what he wants. Fuck off, dude. Jesus Christ. These are professional players. Professional players can fucking go even. I mean, it's completely fine. Going into a match or drafting with the assumption that your opponent will make mistakes is so fucking ridiculous. Oh, it makes me so angry. But that's often the defense that I see on Reddit or in community discords, right? Is, oh, they're just confident that they're going to get advantages. Go fuck yourself, man. Holy shit. If you need your opponent to make mistakes or actually play worse than you, or you have to make an effort to outperform them, you're doing something fundamentally wrong in the draft stage, because there's so many other ways to go about it where that is not a prerequisite.
Right, for example, you just both have win conditions and they're different.
Yeah,
and if they get theirs, you get yours, right? Yeah, sure.
And even at 2 items, Jag should be able to just get straight up mid priority in this draft.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever sideline. So it's like not even.
It's not close.
I'm surprised at this one.
I'll tell you a really depressing realization that I came to a few years back. It's really depressing because obviously if there anyone who loves the idea of great players being geniuses and anime-esque characters than me in LS, right? But I've got a really sad epiphany I had many years ago, LS. After seeing enough interviews with top players, and crucially after getting to do enough myself and then talk to them behind the scenes, so I can really test like what they say in an interview and what they really seem to think, I've actually come to the conclusion that in most esports games, people who are the dominant figures, they actually did not ever sit down and get a fucking blackboard and figure out the genius approach that's going to make them the best. That just happens to be what they did by trial and error that worked the best. And then they just, by essentially a mixture of like happenstance of other people not having the counter to them, became the best. And which is one of the reasons why so often people cannot stay number one, fall slightly off and go right back to number one again. Because typically what they do is they fall off from number one. And as we've said with this Matter example, they keep trying to recreate the past. They keep trying to go back to what made them the best before, when other people have had themselves by trial and error. They've discovered basically the solution to what you did, and then they're now beating you, and then are the dominant team. It's amazing how many of them actually sort of were. This will sound mad, but it's almost like a natural selection phenomenon where they just happened to get through the filter, and we're making it like they navigated through the filter. They didn't. If they'd have happened to be the guy who went totally the other way, as I would say it happened at times with China, then you would look like the idiot. Whereas actually the guy who won, essentially, it's a mixture. It's almost luck as to who made it through in that sense, because everyone's trying what they're wanting, and whoever makes it through makes it. Which is not what you want to believe. You want to believe they're all chess players and that they're all tailoring their strategy. But a lot of that, unfortunately, is like kind of sexed up. It's kind of the things that we speculate in. It's kind of like when you speculate someone did something genius in the game and you later find out they didn't even have vision there. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They just made a play, you know.
Yep. I think it's really interesting because a lot of, you would argue that a lot of what SK did was not even like the most optimal way to play the game, but a lot of times because they had like this player or this situation, they could still make it work, right? There were a lot of times where they just actively opted into going like 10k gold down, and that was just
like LS said. There's no such thing as a game plan that goes, we are more clutch so we can get behind and then win. That's not a game plan. That's like planning to fail. You would never do a war like that.
But even if their drafts like don't necessarily outscale, right, they would still manage to find comebacks from those scenarios. And it was like you're relying on the enemy team to make so many fuck ups that you can get back into the game for 10k gold down, and they would just consistently do it. And people would hold this up as like, this is the best way to play the game. Holy shit! Like,
you can even tie it into Season 9 Griffin. You remember this, LS? Everyone early in the split, the whole hype was like, holy shit, that CV Max is a draft genius. No, he would draft things that weren't good meta picks. He would get behind in the game, and his genius team fighting players would win the game. That is a failed draft that you just won off of player strength. That is not like no one's. There's no such thing as draft you plan to get behind in. Like LS says, you're just literally saying to the opponent, then please don't kill me while you have your foot on my throat.
To fucking bail you out from some of the idiots that won't understand what you're saying there, you can have a draft where you knowingly will bleed life points, right? We see this in trading card games. Control archetypes will use life as a resource. The same way that a team that has a gangplank top lane that might be in a counter matchup, they're fine with losing top tier 1.
Yes.
They won't lose top tier 2. You know, like that's a part of the way that they'll size down the amount of area that they have to turtle on the map, and then I don't know, their defilers come online and you know they can push out again, just like Zerg in StarCraft. There's drafts like that, and then there's drafts that at no stage of the game should it realistically be winning. That there's no tipping point where something changes. And one of the things I was very, very aggressive about, talking about SKT, Griffin, in spring, I would harp on about it, is their drafts were so much more mentally impaired than some of the other teams inside of the league, and they would be bailed out by superior players, superior mechanics, superior team fighting. I mean, one of the fucking things about Griffin, they would fall behind and then win a team fight. And then the game would... You know, they would snowball it, and they would know all the punishes and whatnot.
And not with just scaling comps like we were alluding to.
Not with scaling comps, yeah. It's so gross, man.
Yeah, I remember there were so many things that it's like my players would bring up in a meeting. It's like, well, Griffin's playing this. It's like, yeah, it's fucking bad. It's they're just
say, listen,
Griffin, right?
Let me know when Tarzan's turn up. We'll play it as well.
Yeah, so it's just like a really weird. Like you couldn't actually like look at Griffin's drafts for inspiration on champions because most of it was just like they're winning because they're better at team fights, and that's just the way that the game the series is playing out. And it has to be hard to be a team like that because you can't use scrims to figure out what picks are good, right?
Right, and if someone's not coming in and breaking the fourth wall and getting you to really dig deep about the champion picks, which often if you're just winning everything, I think Griffin actually said in an interview that they don't scrim or play that much. I think they only play 5 scrim games a day. They play 3, then 2, and then VODs, and then it's free time. Griffin's one of the much more lax teams. I believe, I could be wrong, maybe they've changed something, but I think it was said in an interview that they're one of the more lax teams. If you're just going into scrims and you're bulldozing everyone, and you're doing the same things, Korea especially has the if it's not broken, don't fix it, which is why in other esports that have graced Korea, there's been revolutionary periods.
Yes.
Sure. Which, I mean, StarCraft had so many different times. 2000 with Boxer, 2002, 2003 with Nada, 2000 and Isle of Uv, Savior, Bisu, Flash. There's so many revolutionary periods, and LoL is sort of like that too, where I think it's even harder because there's not international competition for them to see that there's issues. Sure. Like, for instance, Pike top, right? Yeah. Even with how grossly oppressive and fundamentally broken the fucking champion is, objectively, Crystal wouldn't pick it up. I mean, they did. By the way, it up, but
that champion in itself is a brilliant example of how different the Korean mentality is to everywhere else, right? If you watch the LEC and you watch Hillasang and Mickey X, you would realize that, especially if your team knows what you're doing, forget how bad Pike is in solo queue. You can take over the whole game from the support position and absolutely crush the opponent if you get this champion online. If you go and watch them play it in Korea, they don't even fucking think it's like a super power pick, seemingly.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Korea thinks that top. I don't know.
But I mean, think of some of the mechanical players in Korea who play support as well. They have some players who could be the MVP of the league if they played this champion.
No, absolutely. There's definitely people that can choose. They can play playmaking supports. I mean, the thing about picks in general, though, that's so frustrating. I don't know to the same extent maybe what it's affecting NA and EU. Tom Kenshin Braum makes me want to stab my fucking eyes in Korea, because there's also champions that are being picked with these champions that are so fundamentally bad against other champs that exist And yet Korea's like, we're just gonna choose Tom and Braum, or they think that Braum counters Tom or something, and it's like, holy shit! How many times do you have to play the same fucking obnoxious game of ping pong in the bot lane before you realize, hey, maybe there's a champion that can make these champions feel pressure, or fundamentally goes against the very concept that they're trying to support and within their team composition. And it's like these lines of thought just never occur. And so we see things happen. What? Go ahead.
I'm just like, there are a lot of picks that are good into Tom Kench right now that are just not being played.
No one picks them.
Yeah, not that impressive.
Tom Kench is bad. I'm a huge fucking advocate that Riot, in theory, can undo all the fucking nerfs to him, in that there's champions that just beat him, and there's champions that beat his stylistic concept of how he functions inside of a role. And pro players refusing to experiment with new champion picks, or people being able to move the pro players into playing them, is what's going on. Look at Karma. Karma's a great example of it. I actually hope to God that the Zyra buffs that come out in 2 days, or is it 2 days? No, 4 days. Gee, what day is it? It's Friday, right? 4 days. I hope the Zyra buffs have a similar placebo effect, where Zyra was perfectly viable, and then she got buffed. All the pros were like, "Oh, Karma." Karma got buffed. All the pros are on Karma now. She's mid. She's top. She's fucking support. Hell, she's even AD when you want her to be. And then Riot undid the buffs.
Yep.
And still she's OP. She's still played.
Strong, yeah.
And she's still broken. Tom Kench sucks. Tom's really bad. He's really bad. Aatrox is bad. Aatrox, Tom, Braum, these are all really fucking bad champions. And all you have to do, I mean, you might argue against the Aatrox thing, which is more reasonable than Tom and Braum. I just lose my shit.
I think part of the reason why Braum is strong is that people just want to play like Corki, right? But I think that champion being nerfed is going to probably phase Braum out of the meta quite a bit. So
Corki's disappeared in Korea. I don't know about NA.
Yeah,
actually, I have a question as kind of like a final topic, because obviously, like, some people have to go in a little bit. So we'll make this like one of the big final topics with how much time we've got left would be, right, in different regions around the world. Sometimes they have totally different philosophy on what lane you should play through, what lane you should try to have priority in, then how you transfer that to the rest of the map. Is this an area also where Korea over the last few years, Kelsey, has this been something that has in some sense cost them their dominance or made them less? I mean, it's not the most optimal way they always play. So does that tie into it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's for sure that is part of it. I also think just watching, like I said, watching the Africa SKT series, it was like they did not even understand their win conditions on the champions that they picked. It's like, okay, we're going to play to the Ryze lane when Ryan's going to naturally outscale inside lane, and then we're just going to ignore like the advantages that we can get out of bot side when Draven permanently has pressure. And then just like these kinds of really awkward decisions, opting into the team fight by SKT and then winning the team fight anyway because fucking Africa wastes like literally every important ultimate on Tom Kench. Like shit like this is so weird, and then SKT get rewarded by winning the team fight and getting the objective, and then Africa can play back into the game. So
Kelsey,
like weird shit like this.
Break it down for me. How what goes through SKT's fucking mind in Game 2's draft? They first pick Tom.
That was so weird. Yeah.
Opponent goes Ryze Sejuani, and then they're like, yes, this is excellent. They have short range engage scaling champions. Let us pick the Skarner so that we can do what they want. And then they accompany it with a fucking Ezreal.
So bad this series too. And it's really
makes no
weird
fucking sense.
because they literally refused to basically gank before Skarner was 6-2. And then so that you can't even there are narrow windows in which like Skarner can actually have game pressure before level 6, but they weren't even attempting those. And then they also have, on top of that, they have like Kennen and Nico that need to really accelerate their lane pressure somehow, and they're just completely falling behind in jungle pressure at all. Like Skarner can't do anything. Like the team comp made no sense. It had basically like one very, very narrow they could have fucking won the game, and they couldn't execute it at all. I think Skarner Bird Flash like level 2, or no, that was the EDG series.
I mean,
but
the draft is so bad, but then Afrika and Kind, so Sejuani, Rise are picked, SKT responds, fucking, I don't know, they're hitting the random selection thing with Skarner and Ezreal. And then Afrika's like, you know what, I think that Thresh would be a fantastic idea here. The Thresh isn't atrocious, there's still better champions than Thresh. Objectively, there's better fucking champions in this spot. Morgana is a lot better because Morgana basically says, okay, now you cannot further choose more champions that have reliance on direct engage or combo or something of that nature. Morgana is going to become very obnoxious against any sort of mid-rangey type of brawler skirmishy comps, which then further plays into Ryze and Seju. Zyra, even in this spot, would be fine because then she's making Skarner and Tom and Ezreal play two sides of the fence. In and of herself, it's really obnoxious. Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly,
God, it's so
you don't even have to blind. I mean, you don't even have to. Yeah, like you could pick Morgana. You could pick. I think honestly, like even Bard. Right, Bard's not the worst here at this point in the game either. So it's just like really strange.
Oh, I'm an advocate of Bard.
I think Bard into Tahm Kench is pretty good, and if they pick something like Ezreal, it's not a bad pickup either. So. I think it's just really weird that you're seeing this type of draft priority, and then they picked Draven into Ezreal, Tahm Kench. Like that was weird too. I think into Tahm Kench it's fine, but into Ezreal it's a little awkward. And then you're blind. Like the only blind, like how dire is your solo lane champion pool when the only blind solos you can think of into Ryze are fucking Ken and Nico with one solo lane pick like that. That was the weirdest part too. It's like there's so many champions still, right?
There were so many champs in that spot that are just so much better than anything that they picked. You like you said. I mean, I'll just list off more supports because I'm sure that people will be curious because I'm roasting them. You have Janna, you have Zyra, you have Bard, you have Morgana. All four of them shut down fundamentally what SKT has drafted up until that point, but it separates them like the fucking US government and families right now in America. Because Ezreal is now
reasonable example, like keep going.
Right. Ezreal is now he's left on an island. And then they basically dissuade champions from being picked that now don't fit the mold. I wish I would use TCG analogies, but fucking viewers would be like, I don't play Magic. There's a lot of ways to describe it, but the problem already is that SKT is drafted so badly and there's not a way for them to realistically salvage it, and there's champions that can be picked by Afrika that shut down all the themes, and then Afrika in kind are like, I think we'll pick Thresh, who's not terrible, but he's not as good as the aforementioned supports.
Sure. Right, by the way, as we now wind this episode up, I'll just say as a parting shot, LS, I do appreciate, like, for what people don't know is, listen, I'm quite famous for my analogies myself, but what people might not realise is the reason why I pick as my analogy point, like, the NBA, the NFL, is because my audience actually has a better chance generally, if they don't know my game I'm talking about, of knowing those sports than maybe what I'm talking about. So, as a reference point, it's good, because the odds are either they know League or they know that, and I've got a chance they're going to get what I'm talking about. What I like about your analogies, LS, is they're so incredibly idiosyncratic. Someone has to have actually already be you to even know your reference, because your reference is as obscure as the actual thing about the game, because they have to also know StarCraft 1 or Dragon Ball Z or Magic the Gathering. It's like, where the fuck's the overlap on this fucking Venn diagram? It's you. You're the only overlap on that.
God damn it.
Right, well, listen. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I learned very early on in League that you can't explain something to people by comparing it to a Chinese team, because they'll just look at you like crazy.
Exactly.
But imagine if I also went in with like fucking Dragon Ball Z. And
I had to teach the Korean team Magic. They all really liked it though.
in order to understand your VOD reviews. I'm sure that's what.
Of course, yeah. It's actually the reason why, as a random off point, it's the reason why actually Monty quite cleverly doesn't make analogies, because you can't make an analogy to some classic piece of literature that nobody in League of Legends ever read. Like, they're not going to know what that allusion means whatsoever. That's more confusing than if you just kept on the game and made the example about the game. So this video was kindly supported by Patrick Ribeiro, Penguin Off 9, Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Fat Guy got 24 ADR in an online qualifier, Lee Chaolan, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, JDubs, Chi Mao, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, Kolja G, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my content? Obviously, I have quite a varied output. Do you want to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA? Maybe you want teasers, see who the guests are on my next shows. Do you want to take part in a donator discussion with me about esports? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scrilluminati today. In the description box below, there's a Patreon link.